The broken deal, when cities stopped working 700 words. For decades, the informal pact was simple. You paid more to live in the great cities, and in return you got speed, safety, and services that worked. Trash got collected, permits moved, schools felt ambitious, police arrived, you paid for time and you got time back. Then the equation slipped. Start with time. A restaurateur in Los Angeles applied for a patio permit that used to take 30 days. 18 months later, he was still answering emails from 4 different departments, each asking for a slightly different diagram. He missed summer, then the winter holidays, then the next summer. Meanwhile, a competitor in Dubai opened a similar concept in 9 weeks. You feel it in emergencies. A family in a once stable San Francisco neighborhood called 911 for an elderly parent in respiratory distress. The ambulance arrived 22 minutes later. The crew was exhausted. The ER was slammed. Discharge took 14 hours. Insurance premiums jumped the next renewal cycle, as if the service delay were the customer's fault. At home, small things turned into weak killers. A homeowner in London tried to replace a cracked window. The glazier couldn't confirm a date because the parking dispensation took a week. The street permit took 2. A last-minute inspection pushed it into the next month. Now stretch that friction across a startup's product launch, a lab's clinical workflow, a family's school search. The social contract frayed inside classrooms, too. Parents in New York spent months on waitlists while outcomes slid and special needs support came unevenly. Some stayed and hired tutors. Others looked at international schools in Singapore where a seat could be confirmed in days, curriculum was predictable, and school transport ran like a train schedule. Public safety drifted from predictable to probabilistic. A boutique owner in Seattle filed 3 reports for burglaries that felt almost routine. Police arrived, but hours later with apologies. Insurance renewed with a higher deductible and a stern clause about inventory storage. The shop's margin evaporated not from theft itself, but from the stack of responses to it. Security guards, cameras, insurance, downtime. All the while, the bills went up. Local taxes rose, fees multiplied. A founder in Paris joked that he'd become an expert in administrative Easter eggs, unexpected obligations that appeared after you thought a process was finished. For households and firms, the calculation turned hard and simple. The price to stay kept rising while the time to yes kept stretching. That trade-off, time to yes versus price to stay, became the quiet meter in everyone's head. Meanwhile, work itself left downtown. Office towers lost tenants, vacancy signs lingered. In San Francisco, floors went dark. Cafes closed on Mondays. Transit missed its farebox targets as hybrid schedules stuck. Bond markets noticed. Credit downgrades followed in multiple big cities in 2023-2024. The cost of borrowing rose just as pension obligations and fixed costs refused to shrink, a pattern documented across several major U.S. metros in 2023-2024. Services got trimmed at the edges. Fewer weekend routes, fewer librarians, fewer park staff, and the trims were felt like cuts. Data told the same story people were living. Outmigration patterns ticked up among high earners and skilled workers. K-12 enrollments declined in major districts, forcing consolidations and closures that rattled neighborhoods. Office vacancy rates punched through old ceilings. The push factors stacked: taxes, housing constraints, safety concerns, and the time tax of process itself. Here's the quiet irritant: unpredictability. A tax bill you plan for is one thing, an audit roulette that hits randomly is another. A permit with clear steps is fine. A permit with silent veto points is a drain. Professionals crave predictability because it protects their scarcest resource, time. When governments lost the muscle memory of decisive service, the best people started pricing their time elsewhere. You saw it in micro. A biotech founder in Boston delayed a trial site because a new local review layer appeared 2 weeks before kickoff. Compensation for staff overtime, idle lab equipment, and a missed conference window converted into a 6-figure burn. Across the globe, a competitor advanced to patient enrollment with a green light delivered through a single-window agency. Product, not process, set the pace there. Housing pressed from the other side. In London, a mortgage reset squeezed a dual-income household. In Lisbon, the same family found a rent-to-own deal attached to a residency track, with international school seats bundled by an agency that answered calls on the first ring. The trade wasn't only cheaper housing, it was de-risked planning. That's what people paid for, and what they stopped getting at home. Neighborhoods felt the aftershocks early. A restaurant strip lost its anchor tenant, the spillover traffic vanished, 2 more places closed. A school's PTA lost half its donors when 3 families moved to Zurich in a 6-week span. The remaining families absorbed the gap. City Hall said help was coming. It often didn't or came as a pilot program wrapped in forms. Meanwhile, something else was happening in other hubs. They studied where Western cities were slow and built frictionless on-ramps. Concierge government desks, fast visa pathways, predictable tax rules, and schools that could onboard a child in days. They didn't promise perfection, they promised consistency. That's all a high performer needs. This was the moment everything changed, when the people who most valued time realized their city no longer did. The deal broke not in a single crisis, but in 1,000 small delays that added up to a push. And while services stalled at home, other places engineered speed. The new magnets, where the winners are landing. While services stalled at home, the landing pads were already built. Start in Dubai. The lab team that left SFO cleared immigration in minutes on a remote work entry, then converted to a long-stay residency within weeks. Their files moved through a single portal. A liaison scheduled school assessments for their kids and set up utility accounts the same afternoon. No guesswork, 0 income tax. The team's CFO ran the numbers on day 3 and quietly emailed the board. Burn extends by 8 months just from tax and lease differentials. Across the strait, Singapore drew a different slice. A fintech founder from London booked a one-way ticket after a year of compliance gridlock at home. In Singapore, licensing didn't feel lax, it felt legible. The monetary authority spelled out the path, the regulator took calls, and a provisional sandbox gave him runway to ship. He joined a co-working floor where half the neighbors were risk officers and payments engineers. By Friday, his bank account was live, payroll scheduled, school interviews complete. Zurich ran on calm. A German AI researcher with 2 kids and an aging parent needed 3 things: safety, healthcare, and schools that could handle a gifted program without a fight. Switzerland didn't flatter him with perks, it offered order. The apartment was ready. The international school had a seat and a plan. The clinic assigned a case manager for his father's meds day 1. His lab bench arrived 2 weeks later, and his team joked that Swiss customs treated research gear better than their own airport did. Lisbon and Madeira caught the hybrid lives. A New York designer decamped to a rented townhouse with a residency pathway that didn't demand full-time presence. Her firm kept its U.S. clients. She picked up European ones with afternoon calls. The agency that handled her visa also found a bilingual preschool and an orthodontist. Costs settled lower. Time stretched longer. She flew back quarterly, but the center of gravity shifted south. Riyadh turned a few heads that swore they'd never move to Saudi. A British media entrepreneur didn't go for the lifestyle, he went for the brief. A content studio deal came with tax certainty, a production license in weeks, and a clause that reimbursed relocation costs if targets were met. He brought 6 staffers. They landed, worked, and sent for families after the schools checked out. Call it transactional, but the transaction delivered. Mexico City pulled a surprising crowd from Los Angeles and Madrid. Creatives, software leads, small studio heads. They weren't chasing zero tax. They wanted a network, culture, and manageable costs. Neighborhoods like Condesa and Roma Norte filled with hybrid teams. Global schools opened new campuses. Flight schedules to U.S. hubs multiplied. The value wasn't just price per square foot. It was the density of talent at cafes between 9 and noon. Then Bengaluru, where an American AI startup opened a second headquarters. Not offshore support, but core engineering. Hardware access, compute partnerships, and a recruiting pipeline from the IITs created a cluster that actually argued back in code reviews. The CEO split time and then stopped splitting. Investors followed for demo days that didn't feel like subsidiaries. They felt like the main act. The pattern wasn't accidental. These places engineered pull factors, visas that approve fast and renew without drama, clear rules for carried interest and territorial taxation, schools that onboard in days, not semesters, streets you can walk at night with your laptop bag, hospitals with appointments that start on time, governance that answers the phone. Sector clustering did the rest. In Dubai, crypto firms and family offices shared the same elevators, and a founder closed a seed round in an afternoon after a chance gym conversation. In Singapore, payments, compliance, and sovereign capital sat 3 subway stops apart. Pilots turned into contracts. Zurich stitched AI labs to pharma R&D and private banking. Lisbon's creative class linked with nearshore dev teams and tourism tech venture funds. Riyadh's media and gaming push brought soundstages and motion capture rigs. Mexico City's indie film scene overlapped with creator economy startups optimizing royalty flows through IP holding entities. Bengaluru combined AI research with biotech sandboxes that ran approvals in months, not years. Human moments made it sticky. One founder moved first, promising the team they could decide later. 2 weeks in, the operations lead saw her kids laughing in a new schoolyard and said yes. The head of engineering found a clinic that diagnosed an issue he'd been chasing for months. The CFO paid a utilities bill with one app and never looked back. Capital noticed the body language change before the press did. Cost of time arbitrage sealed the choice. Concierge governance shaved weeks off processes that used to stall products. A work permit in 30 days instead of 9 months. A business license this month, not next year. A tax ruling in writing that actually bound the agency. Time to yes compressed, price to stay stabilized, and the compounding started. Product shipped sooner, revenue sooner, hiring sooner, iteration sooner. From the outside, these relocations looked personal: schools, safety, taxes. Up close, the incentives were designed. Policy didn't chase headlines, it built funnels. And once a team landed and shipped, the signal traveled back through group chats and board calls. It works here. The incentive machines, policy as a funnel. None of this was accidental. The on-ramps were built like products with fewer clicks and better support. Golden visas, remote worker residencies, and corporate tax holidays weren't loose promises. They were funnels. You entered with a passport scan and left with a school seat, a bank account, and a predictable tax ruling. The policy architects knew the moment of maximum friction back home and placed a welcome mat right there. Countries like the UAE formalized 5-10-year golden visas. By the early 2020s, notably expanded in 2022, and layered in remote worker tracks with clear income thresholds. Start with golden visas. In the UAE, the 10-year track wrapped investors, founders, and specialized talent into one category. No local sponsor, family included. You could be out of the country for months and keep residence. A founder arrived as a virtual worker and switched to a long-term visa once the term sheet hit. The message was simple: move first, paper later. While that happened, concierge desks booked medicals, utilities, and school assessments in a single week. Portugal took a different angle: residency by investment with minimal stay requirements. 7 days a year, and since 2023, funds instead of most real estate categories with a clear path to permanency. For executives who'd never planned to live on the Tagus but needed a European foothold, it solved an anxiety, optionality without a lifestyle upheaval. The point wasn't beaches, it was leverage across jurisdictions. Then the remote worker visas. Countries realized that where your laptop opens was the new border. In 2021-2024, many launched one-year permits with renewable lanes, payroll guidance, and sometimes local health coverage bundled in. A compliance page explained how to keep paying taxes in your origin country while holding legal status locally. It wasn't just a stamp, it was a compliance kit. Corporate tax holidays added the signal boost. Singapore's incentives weren't giveaways, they were agreements. Bring jobs, bring IP, bring activity, get a lower effective rate and certainty in writing. Dubai's free zones mapped sectors to regulators that actually answered emails. Riyadh layered in license fast tracks tied to production goals. The policy didn't romance founders, it signed contracts with them. Here is where taxation structure shapes behavior. Territorial versus worldwide taxation sounds abstract until it hits a paycheck, a dynamic emphasized in 2023-2024 relocation guidance. Under territorial systems, you're taxed on income generated inside the country. Earn elsewhere, not taxed locally. For mobile professionals, that's clarity. For Americans, worldwide taxation followed them, unless they engineered around it with exclusions, foreign tax credits, or entity structures. One engineer with U.S. citizenship moved to Dubai, kept filing to the IRS, and still came out ahead because zero local tax plus careful planning lowered his global bill. A British counterpart, non-domiciled under certain regimes, kept foreign income out of the UK tax net entirely. Same coffee shop, totally different math. Carried interest and non-dom regimes became magnets for capital allocators. In some hubs, carry could be taxed favorably if structured through local partnerships or recognized as capital gains. In others, non-domiciled status meant foreign investment returns stayed outside the domestic tax base for a defined window. Family offices didn't need a billboard. They needed a memo that said, "Here's your holding company, here's your treaty network, here's your exit tax risk, now move." Double tax agreements stitched it together. A treaty could mean the difference between paying twice and paying once. Bankers learned the matrices, lawyers packaged them, and the treaty-optimized route turned into a standard slide in a relocation deck. A founder set up a holding company in a treaty-friendly jurisdiction, a trading entity where VAT worked, and a local employer of record where payroll compliance was turnkey. The friction dropped, the funnel widened. Speed was quantified. Start to license timelines were published. 30 days for a company registration, 15 for a work permit, 45 for a specialized lab approval. Single-window agencies replaced agency sprawl. Instead of wandering between ministries, you uploaded documents to one portal and watched a progress bar move. When a regulator wanted clarification, they asked once. The system was designed to keep a person in momentum. Then came the family on-ramp kits. Policymakers learned, if you solve schools, healthcare, and housing, the rest follows. International schools reserved seats for incoming cohorts tied to visa approvals. Health systems issued resident IDs that booked next-week appointments. Housing agencies pre-approved leases with utility activation pre-scheduled. A relocation week looked like this. Monday medical, Tuesday bank and license, Wednesday school assessments, Thursday lease, Friday welcome call with a city liaison. No heroics, just order. Digital nomad visas matured too. Early versions were stamps with selfies. The new wave integrated payroll compliance. If you earned local income, you got guidance on withholding. If you didn't, you got a clean letter stating your obligations. That letter saved months of arguments with a home country accountant and a future mortgage underwriter. Predictability again. Policy is a funnel, but it only works if pain back home is acute. When a founder in California waited 9 months for a zoning variance, 2023 case, the 30-day foreign license wasn't a perk, it was air. When a researcher in Paris hit a sudden audit of grant spending, the jurisdiction offering certainty for scientific equipment imports became a lifeline. When a London household faced an unpredictable council tax hike, a capped property levy abroad felt like a contract. Governments that understood this built follow-through. They measured time to yes, published KPIs, and held agencies to them. They created escalation desks that actually escalated. They didn't promise to be cheap, they promised to be consistent. And once the first cohort landed and shipped, the funnel self-filled. Board members called board members, group chats hummed. The incentive machines didn't need slogans, they had service levels and a wait list. The 4 pushes, why people finally leave. There's a point where inconvenience turns into a plan. It usually starts with safety and predictability. A surgeon in Oakland renewed her homeowner's insurance and found the premium up 38% with a new wildfire exclusion, 2024 renewal. 2 weeks later, she swept glass from her car twice in 1 month, the crunch under her shoes sticking to the curb and the smell of brake dust and cold oil in the morning air. The 3rd time, she didn't call it in. The police had been kind, overworked, and late. A report number felt like a ritual. Her insurer added a clause about street parking and raised the deductible again. She could absorb the cost. She couldn't absorb the randomness. In 2023-2024, auto theft claims doubled in several urban cores. She was one line in that chart. Her hospital quietly circulated a 2024 memo about rising disruptions on the commute. Assaults up on 2 lines, delayed arrivals climbing, a map with red circles along her route. That night, she texted a recruiter in Singapore and stared at the 3 dots like a lifeline. At dawn, she found a screwdriver under the tire, someone's failed theft tool, still cold from the concrete and smeared with gritty black. She took it as an omen and put it in a Ziploc-like evidence. Flights became their own coin toss. A founder commuting between New York and London watched 3 cancellations in 6 weeks blow up payroll onboarding and investor meetings. Winter 2023-2024 storm windows. The airport speakers crackled apologies. The gate agent shrugged. The sour coffee at 11:47 p.m. tasted like time burning and tin. A missed connection meant a week's delay on a banking appointment that took months to secure. Meanwhile, the destination jurisdiction offered a letter guaranteeing regulator availability the following week. Predictability feels like safety when your business rides deadlines. In 2023-2024, U.S. cancellation rates spiked in multiple storm windows. Abroad, the regulator's calendar arrived as a PDF with slots. He screenshotted the PDF and sent it to the board with one line: "They pick up." He booked a one-way and slept at the gate with his hoodie over his eyes like it was a decision. Then housing math pushed. A Seattle engineer's adjustable mortgage reset in late 2024. The new payment didn't break him, but it stole the cushion that made risk tolerable. Down the block, a landlord passed on higher financing costs and new insurance rates. The hallway smelled like fresh paint, damp drywall, and blue painter's tape curling at the edges. The engineer ran a rent-to-own model in Lisbon and found a residency track bundled with a predictable monthly line, school seats, private health plan, 10-year fixed rent escalators. He wasn't chasing a bargain. He was buying a plan that fit on a spreadsheet and didn't change mid-year. He taped the Lisbon number to the fridge like a dare and circled the day his arm reset again. The marker squeaked. The sound made his stomach drop. Buy-to-let collapsed for a London couple who'd held 2 flats for years. Regulations squeezed yield, repairs dragged, and void periods lengthened with every permit delay, 2023-2024. A bank in Dubai offered a mortgage on a new build with handover certainty and 0 local income tax. They sold 1 flat at a discount, boxed books by the light of a bare bulb, labeled cables with masking tape, parked the equity, and moved the horizon 5 years forward. The math didn't sing. It cleared its throat and said this way. They told friends it was temporary and quietly renewed the lease after the first school term. The box with the wedding china stayed sealed. The lease renewal didn't. She ran her thumb along the chip in the top plate and put the lid back on. Schooling added friction no one budgets for. A parent in Brooklyn fought through 2 lotteries, won a seat, lost it to rezoning, and then discovered inconsistent support for a child who needed speech therapy, 2023-2024. Appeals, forms, and a rotating caseworker became a second job. In Zurich, the same child was assessed in a week and placed in a consistent program with a clear plan. In Singapore, a family with twins found 2 seats confirmed in days, bus routes mapped, and a counselor assigned who answered emails within hours. The move wasn't about prestige. It was about sleep and a calendar that stopped moving the goalposts. The mother cried in a grocery aisle the first time the school bus arrived on time 3 days in a row, clutching a jar of pasta sauce like a handle, forehead pressed to the cool glass of the freezer door until the fog cleared. Special needs support exposed the brittleness of systems. A Boston family pulled their child from a stop-start program after a staffing change erased months of progress. Abroad, a school contract listed services, hours, and escalation steps. One detail that would prove crucial later: services didn't reset each term, they rolled until goals were met. Predictable inputs, predictable outputs. The mother kept that clause folded in her wallet like a talisman. When a therapist abroad called proactively to reschedule, she realized she hadn't checked her phone at 3 a.m. in weeks. She slept, then signed the lease. The pen left a blot on the last page. She didn't wipe it. Regulatory drag turned professionals into litigators against time. A founder in Lowe's Angels signed a lease for a small biotech wet lab. Fire codes shifted mid-permit. A new ventilation spec required an engineer who was booked for 12 weeks. By the time the inspection lined up, a city audit flagged an expired form from a sub-vendor she'd never met. Payroll continued. Interns waited. A conference talk slipped to next year because data wasn't ready. She moved 5 core staff to a jurisdiction that granted lab clearance in 6 weeks. The original landlord wrote a polite letter about penalties. Her board wrote another about timelines. In 2023, a similar zoning variance took 9 months in California. Abroad, the stopwatch read 42 days door-to-door. The day the green light came, she posted the lab photo with a single caption, 42. Her DMs filled with flight confirmations and a photo of a packed suitcase sitting on a scale. Audits weren't the problem. Audit roulette was. A mid-size fund manager in London got 3 HMRC requests in 18 months, each time-consuming, each closing with minor adjustments. Contrast that with a clear non-dom ruling in a different jurisdiction that lasted a defined window. One sentence in a letter, valid for X years barring material changes, was worth more than a lower nominal rate with moving goalposts. He didn't need 0 tax. He needed certainty, in writing, dated 2024, signed with a name and a phone number that picked up. He framed the letter like a diploma and emailed a scan to his LPs with the subject line, "Clock restored." The frame hung a little crooked. He left it that way as a reminder of the wobble he'd escaped. Thresholds trigger wealth flight long before tax rates do. A founder in Paris reeled from a retroactive classification that changed the treatment of his stock options. Another in California discovered a patchwork of local fees tied to headcount that applied after a payroll threshold, 2024 notices. The amounts weren't fatal. The discovery timing was. They looked at regimes where carried interest had legible treatment and where exits were planned years in advance with treaty support. The rumor that rules might change became a meeting with a relocation council. The meeting became a date on a calendar invite labeled Options Treatment Final. The final became one-way tickets. Their Slack emoji changed from eyes to airplane. The office plants were still green when they handed in their badges. Meanwhile, insurance for businesses crossed from risk management to risk transfer. A boutique manufacturer in Chicago saw liability coverage double after a small claim, then wrestled with an inspector who cited a door hinge and demanded a costly retrofit. He priced a move to a free zone abroad with a published codebook and a pre-inspection checklist that prevented surprises. The hinge didn't decide it. The checklist did. In 2023-2024 filings, double-digit commercial premium hikes landed across multiple lines. His inbox felt like proof. He snapped a photo of the renewal and sent it to his partner with 2 words: "We're done." They packed sample pieces in bubble wrap that night, the tape gun shrieking across cardboard like a siren. Here's the quiet number that spooked the room. In 2023-2024, some U.S. household insurers sought double-digit rate hikes across wildfire and theft-exposed zip codes, and in certain urban cores, auto theft claims doubled over 2 years. People don't track rate filings. They track the moment a bill arrives and a window shatters twice in a month, and the broom is already by the door. They track the sound of a catalytic converter saw at 3 a.m., the metallic snarl under the bedroom window, and the way neighbors stop making eye contact in the morning when they step over glittering shards. There's a human moment just before departure. A teacher in Dublin who loved her school stayed late to help a student apply for a scholarship. The next morning she learned her housing lease wouldn't renew. The landlord was selling. She'd been on 2 waitlists for months. The kettle clicked off. She forgot to pour the tea. A colleague texted a link to a Riyadh package that included housing for educators and guaranteed placement for children. She felt disloyal opening it. She felt foolish not to. That afternoon, she folded the school pennant into a shoebox and cried in the staff bathroom because the hand dryer drowned the sound. That night, she set 2 alarm clocks, one for work, one to call the recruiter before she lost her nerve. She made the call at 5:58 a.m. and accepted at 6:12. The tea was still cold on the counter when she left for first period. Individually, these are inconveniences. Combined, they're gravity. Once the first movers go doctors, founders, researchers, their teams follow, then capital follows them. Markets don't wait for press conferences. They follow people who have run the math and decided their hours matter. And in 2023-2024, in city after city, the meter on randomness kept ticking up while the meter on time to yes ticked down. That's when the group chats changed tone, from complaint to itinerary, from anyone know a locksmith, to what's the best international school near Gate A. Follow the money, capital moves before headlines.